today is our snowman, and with our snowman we want to have paper towel on hand. I always have it on hand just to tap my brushes so that I don't get excess water, or if I need to lift off paint, then I've got my paper towel to do that. Now I just buy a roll and it splits in 3. So if I put these into, if I make this into 3, however I could hold that, I take one little sheet and I cut it into 3. So that's what I use. And sometimes when I run low on my little pads to wipe with, I just leave the paper towel roll on the coffee table. And so if I'm watching the news, I just sit with scissors and I just cut and I make a big pile so that I'm ready. So that's what I do with those. So I don't use a whole sheet. I just use small pieces. We'll also want, I've got some big buckets of water here, but you can use smaller if you like. So I have 2 containers of water, one clear, one for rinsing brushes. And I have our salt. So this is just a little bit of salt. It's about ½ teaspoon. And that's, I don't know if you can see that in there, but that's what we're going to use for the background for the look of snowflakes. So that's a really great way to make snowflakes on things. It's also nice for textures on flowers, and it's nice for grasses. So that's another option. You can use that option or try that technique. Our colors today, I've got cobalt blue, red. So you're welcome to use alizarin crimson, cadmium red. What else have I got? A brilliant red. Just whatever red you use, just carry that same color throughout the picture rather than adding a new one. I've got some green, so I'm using Hooker's green. And I have some, it looks like, well, on the buttons that I've made are black. The mouth is black. The eye of the bird is black. And then I've shaded the bottom of the picture in a gray color, which I made just by watering out the black. So not to worry if you don't have those exact colors. Use what you've got and enjoy. So I think we're at the top of the hour. So I welcome you and I thank you for coming along on the art class today. It is my pleasure to teach you what I learn, what I play with. And it's also wonderful to see the creations that you develop. And hopefully some of you that have been on for quite some time are starting to get a little bit more of your personality just to see what you like to do, what works for you, and how to use some of the tips and tricks that you might have picked up along the way. So with that, I've also drawn a card for halftime, which I will read at halftime, halfway through. I try to end on time the best that I can. And whatever I read, it's been drawn. It's I say from the universe, it's a message for all of us. So with that, we also want to have, again, for those that are fairly new, we'll want a couple of containers of water. So one I keep clear, one I keep to rinse my brushes. And colors, as I said, cobalt blue, Hooker's green, red, whichever red you've got. Try to keep consistent with the same red. And those cheeks are a pinky color, so it's just watered down red. And the nose is orange, an orangey color, the nose of the snowman. So we'll mix yellow or ochre and red together. And we'll just blend those 2 colors together. I like to mix colors, and I also like to show you some fun stuff to do. So with that, we'll get started. So again, thank you all for coming on and for sharing your time. So with that, we'll get started. I'm going to change my camera around. So you'll be looking at the same thing I'm looking at. So it's a drawing. If you haven't done the drawing before, that drawing is probably available in the chat so that you can do a quick drawing if you wish to with pencil. So there's our snowman. So the same as you, I'm starting with a blank canvas for a drawn sketch. And we'll all just work together. I'll take you through step by step, and we'll just have some fun with this. So I'm using a number 6 pointed brush today just for the outline, because I'm using this brush. It's a little bit bigger, and I'm using it a little bit bigger one because it's quite a lot of area that we're going to cover all the way around the outside of the snowman. So just with clear water, we're going to get into some color now. So let's have some fun. With clear water, I'm going to paint the outside of my snowman. I'm going to go around the outside of the bird. If I touch on the bird, I'm not so concerned because it's going to be painted anyways. So this is an art class that is not about perfection. If you go out of the lines or in the lines, that's okay. If you change your colors, if they're a little bit different from what I paint, that's okay. I'm not about telling anyone that they're doing something wrong or it's not, it doesn't match what everyone else is doing. This is your art. So I'm only painting to the bottom of the snowman where there's a little line, and I'm going around those snowballs. So that's what they are. They're actual snowballs. So I'm just putting wet paint around those snowballs, just coming up the side of the snowman on the other side. And this is just clear water. So it's difficult to see. If you want to know if you have a space, if you turn your canvas on an angle, you'll see a dry spot, and you can just touch water onto that spot. And if you paint it onto your snowman and you don't want that to be there, then you can just use your paper towel and just tap it off. So if I hold this on an angle, I can see I've got some dry spots. I'm just going to cover those up with a little bit of water, trying to come right to the line as close as I can. Just around the bird, right to the nose, right under that bird, right to the top of the face of the snowman. So just trying to, I don't want too much of a halo. And again, you can use paper towel. If you've got water on your snowman, you can use paper towel and just tap that dry. And again, if you just hold it on an angle, you'll see where you might have missed, where you just might have a dry spot. So we're just priming the canvas at this point, just getting it ready to receive paint. And again, I'm just trying to go to that line, not below the line. So I'm just going to use a bit of paper towel and just tap that dry, just absorb a little bit of that water that I've got on one arm and on a scarf. So now I'm going into cobalt blue, again with my larger brush because it's a bigger area. And as I primed my canvas, when I touch the paint on the canvas, because the canvas is wet, you can see that it's starting to really move. And I'll need to clean that up around my snowman arm. And it's okay to go over those flowers because we're going to paint them. So again, I'm using paper towel, just taking off that excess from the arm. There we go. And I've got lots of water on there, so it's really moving very nicely. It's not important to have every section completely even. If you have lights and darks, that's okay. So I'm just going to that line on the one side. Working on top of the bird. Right over to the other side. Just coming around the side of the face. So hopefully this snowman gives you a smile. It's just a fun picture for the season. And again, I'm just going around those snowballs at the bottom. And you can see I'm not being too particular about what my background looks like. It's some lights and some darks. And where I've got a little puddle, a little excess, I'm just going to touch my paper towel onto that spot. And the paper towel will naturally absorb that extra. You see I've got a little bit darker in this area. That's okay. A little bit lighter up here, a little bit darker down around the scarf. And all of it's okay. And now before this dries, I'm going to put the salt on my canvas. So I don't want it all to be dry. I'm putting the salt on. I'm just tapping it on there all over, wherever the blue is. So already where that salt is sitting, because my canvas is still wet, already the salt is starting to separate the paint from the paper. So I'll have a little bit of a snowflake effect once that is dry. So I've put that on there, and it's dry enough now on mine to tip my canvas back up. So I'm going to leave that salt on there to do whatever it's going to do. But I have a few really pretty spots where you can see that the paint is separating just from the salt. So I'm just going to leave that salt to dry. See, it's just starting to move that paint. The salt will absorb some of the paint. So I'll have a snowflake effect. So we're just putting that salt on and letting it sit. We will blow dry, but I want that salt to dry a little bit by itself first. So you'll see some spots. Here's one by my snowballs that's really started to star a little bit, which is quite pretty. Maybe you have more than I have on. Maybe you have less. Or maybe you have patches. And in order to carry on with the picture without disturbing the salt from drying, we're going to work on the bottom of the picture. So I'm going to put black on my easel.
Excuse me, Cathy?
Yes.
What if you have salt all over your snowman, like I do?
We're going to blow dry before we get into the middle of the snowman, so that's okay. That's okay.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome. So let's move down to the bottom. And I'm using black, but I'm watering it down to be a light gray color. And I'm just going to go from side to side, just a wispy look. I'm not trying to fill in the whole thing, but I'm just giving almost a shadow effect at the bottom. And if there's salt on there, that's okay. Don't worry about that, but you can leave some white spaces in there as well. You don't need to fill it all in. Some can be a little bit darker, some can be a little bit lighter. We're just looking for a grounding for our picture for the snowman. Maybe we had to roll a lot of snow and we're now in the gravel. So we're just looking for a light coating at the bottom. So I'm working around the areas to try and avoid any wet spots. So still working with the black, and I'm switching to a smaller brush. This is a number 3 pointed brush. I'm going into straight black. Now, if you have salt on your snowman's face where the mouth is, you can go ahead and you can just use your finger and wipe off any salt that's there. And if you have any salt where the buttons are, just rub those a little bit with your finger and that should clear off any excess salt. And we'll work with the mouth. So just be careful of your edges of your canvas, that if you're going to put your finger for balance, just put it on the outside away from your snowman, or you can put your finger in the center of your snowman where it's dry. And we're just going to paint the mouth. We're just going to paint that happy mouth just with straight black paint. And if yours is thinner than mine or thicker than mine, that's entirely up to you. As I said, we're not about perfection. We're just about having some fun, trying a new technique with some salt. We haven't done salt for quite some time. So there's a very happy smile. And we'll do some buttons. So I like to do odd numbers of things. Our brain can naturally compute even numbers, but when you do odd numbers of things, the eye lingers a little bit longer. And that's what you want with your art, for the observer to look just a little bit longer. So we've got a nice smile, a happy smile, and some buttons. Now I think we've given long enough for the outside to dry as much as it's going to dry. So at this point, we'll need to use a blow dryer. So that was included in the instructions. So we'll want to use a blow dryer and blow dry everything that's on here. Being careful when you blow dry not to smear the black that you've got on there by blowing and it over to the side. But you want everything that you can see on your picture to be dry before we move ahead. So I'm going to mute my volume and blow dry. And if you could do the same, we'll be back in a few minutes. So I could tell mine was dry when I had one button that was quite thick in paint, and I could tell mine was dry when there was no longer that wet shine on that button. So if you still have a wet, shiny look on parts of your picture, then it needs to be a little bit drier. So what we're going to do next is just use our fingers and just wipe off the salt. So I'm just going over my canvas just with my fingers, and I'm just taking off the salt, and you'll be able to feel it. It's almost like when you go to the beach and you put your feet in the sand and you get that really soft, smooth feel on your feet. So you'll feel that sand or salt, and you're just taking the opportunity, if you have any on the bird or any on the face or around the outside of the snowman. At this point, we want to take off all the salt as long as your canvas is dry. So what you'll be left with are little indents, little white spots on your canvas where the salt has lifted off the paint. And so you'll have the look of snow in different areas of your picture, little snowflakes. And if when you're done and you want to repeat this process and add some more, you can certainly do that just with a little spray bottle. Just spray a little water and a little bit of extra salt, let it dry, and then wipe that off again. So you can add more later. So hopefully you have some fun snowflakes on your picture at this point. And if you're painting Christmas cards for people, this is a wonderful addition. If you're making little gift cards, this is a beautiful way to do it, just to make those snowflakes. It's very difficult to make those snowflakes without the use of some other, whether you use a whiteout, a masking fluid, but just to get these snowflakes that are all unique and different with the salt is a beautiful technique. So let's move on with our snowman. And I'm going to use something called Brilliant Red. It's nice and bright. And I'm going to start with my scarf. And I'm going to do every other part of the scarf. And I also want to keep in mind that this scarf folds over. So in the center is going to be a little bit darker. So I'm doing every other part of the scarf. This is a colorful knitted scarf. So I'm missing a spot in between so that I get that nice two-toned look. I'm going to move down onto the scarf that's on top of his tummy. So if you've drawn this picture, then you'll be able to see how that scarf is going. If you're going to draw this picture, then that's the way that we need to have every other spot a different color. And I'm moving over to the other scarf that flips out into the snowy sky, doing every other panel. So if you're a sewer, a seamstress, or if you've been doing patterns, you're very familiar how to do this. And I'm moving up to the chin. And again, doing every other. So my last one, this will be green, and this will be green on the outside. And while I've got this red, I'm going to create the look of mittens on the end of the arms. And I'm going to put a little thumb notch. I'm still using the same red. We'll do the other side, do the mitten, and a little thumb notch. And it looks like I've got one mitten bigger than the other, so I'm just going to add to my other mitten, just make it a little bit bigger, just to match. And while you're doing that, we're at halftime, so I'm going to read the card that applies to all of us. It says, I claim my desires. I hold great visions. I am ready to receive. So if there are things that you're desiring, things that you can envision for yourself, just be ready because it's coming. Just be ready. Be ready to receive. When we open ourselves up to opportunities, they often show up. Now, some of my red has dried just a little bit lighter than I want, and that's what happens with watercolor. It dries 20 to 30% lighter than when you put it on. So I'm just going to go back and touch up with a little bit extra red. The same color red, I'm not changing the color. Just because I'm adding an extra layer of the same color, it brightens it up just that little bit more. So I want that a nice bright red to pop. alongside the white. And if you're on your scarf, all of your little panels that you're painting now aren't completely perfect. We are going to put green in between, so you'll have an opportunity to adjust if you want to do that. So there's my red. And now what I'm going to do with that red on my brush, on my paint tray, I'm going to add a lot of water. So I have a very, very soft pinky tone. And there aren't, it may look like there was eyes on the snowman, but there are no eyes. The eyes are invisible, but we have pink cheeks. So these are just little pink cheeks on our snowman. So I'm letting the red on the scarf dry. I'm moving to different areas. Just allow that red to really dry. And with the red that I have, I'm going to add a little bit of yellow, or you can add ochre. We're looking for orange. So when you mix red and yellow, or pink and yellow, or pink and ochre, or red and ochre, you come up with an orange color. And so we're going to paint our snowman orange carrot nose. In order to let the scarf still continue to dry and now the nose to dry, we won't do the bird yet. We'll move on to the little holly berry branches that the bird is holding. That's where this green is going to come in, and I'm using Hooker's green still with my small brush. I'm using a number 3. If you have a 0, if you want to use a smaller brush, go ahead. But I'm just doing the branches. Just in green. And I'm going to do the little leaves on the end. So there's a couple of little olive-shaped branches on the ends. I did those in green, and I painted right over the beak. We will do ochre over the beak, so it will appear that the bird is holding those branches. So go ahead and paint in the green right over the beak first. So again, I like to move from one section to the next just to let things dry so we don't have a blending of colors and then you're trying to fix something and it's very frustrating. So I'm going to use my larger brush again. I'm back to the largest brush I've got. And I'm going to use a little bit of the blue, the cobalt blue. mixed with a little bit of black. So I want, and black is very overpowering. So try to put in more blue than black. We're looking for a really soft color. So if, for example, if I take cobalt blue, and I add just the smallest bit of black and water. So I want it to be thinned out. So I'm looking for a soft color. Just a little bit on the blue side, but it's got that gray undertone, which will give the effect of melting snow. So I'm going to take my brush and very lightly up the side of the snowman with that blue and black mix. I'm just going to do the outline at the side. I'm not doing a solid line. I'm just doing a wispy mark that makes the appearance of the snow melting. And if I do a rounded area, it gives that belly more of a rounded look. So I'm just giving a rounded look to the belly, just with that blue-gray mix. And I can do the underarm just a little bit, just to give definition. And I'm going to do the same effect with the blue-gray, watered down on the sides of the face, coming up and a little bit from, not touching the scarf, but just up from the scarf, just around the sides of the face. And if you find it's too dark while it's still wet, rinse your brush and use clear water and lighten it up and just tap off any excess that you've removed. So we're just looking for a nice, soft, rounded look for the face. Just that look of melting snow. So I'm not trying to get rid of all of the white. Matter of fact, I like the white to stay. But I do want to have that look of snow. So that was using my larger brush, and I'm switching back to my small brush again, my small pointed brush, my number 3. And I'm going to paint that bird. So on the bird, there's a little white section we'll want to leave in the center. But the rest of the bird we're going to paint. Leave the, actually, sorry, I say that, but let's put a circle around that eye first. Just paint a circle around the eye. And then we can, and not the beak, we'll let the beak sit by itself. And then we'll just paint this little bird. I'm leaving the tail feathers. I'll come back and do those after. And I want to leave that little white section in the center. And that bird's going to sit right on top of the nose. So I have a little section. I would have rathered it was a little bit bigger, but it's still a little white spot in the bird in the center. And we'll do that lifting off technique that we've done so often. I want the belly of the bird lighter. So with the damp brush, I'm painting the belly just with a clean, damp brush and lifting off that excess paint. So I have the belly of the bird just a little bit lighter, still that blue shade, but just a little bit lighter. And remembering that when you paint, it dries 20 to 30% lighter from when you put it on. Now we're going to add the tail to the bird in the same color in Cobalt, but I'm using full strength paint, not so much water. It's the same color blue. But it looks that much darker just because the other has dried. And with my number 3 brush again, my small brush, I'm rinsing it off. I'm going into Hooker's Green. And I'm going to do the scarf. So I'm doing every other section of the scarf in green. And it looks like I've just got a little bit of wet red, so I'm just going to tap that off, let that dry, and move to the next section. So if you find that one of your spots of your scarf isn't quite dry, you can use a paper towel and just tap it off and leave it and move on. You can come back to that spot. It will dry. Because you've tapped it off, it will dry a little bit faster. And I'm doing every other section in green. So this is where I said if you had different shapes or sizes and you weren't quite happy with it, this is your opportunity to do adjustment. So we've got a nice candy cane looking scarf for our snowman.
Excuse me, Cathy, it's Camille. The green, was it just Hooker's Green?
Yes, I'm still using Hooker's Green.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And I totally forgot that we normally do some breathing exercise at the beginning of the art class, and I didn't do that. And so if you're holding your breath, just take a deep breath, drop your shoulders, maybe just give with one arm or something, give your neck a little massage just to relieve any tension. And somebody was asking what was the spirit, our spirit junkie card for today. Was I claim my desires, I hold great visions, and I am ready to receive. And I'm going back where I haven't done green yet. I've got a couple of spots, so I'm going to fill those in. So this is where my scarf folds over. And because I dried that with paper towel, it's already dry, so I can go back and I can fix that red as long as I don't hit the green. I'm just going to touch up that red in that section. And we have the fringe on the ends of the scarves. I'm just doing opposite color, doing a little bit green on one side. And it doesn't have to be perfect or even. It's a fringe and the wind is blowing, so it's not going to be perfect anyways. And I'm just touching some little lines just to show a fringe on the ends of the scarf. And if you still have red on your brush, we can put a couple of berries up on our branches. Just some holly berries, just for color. And still with my small pointed brush, I'm going to paint the beak of the bird. And I'm going to paint that beak that it goes right over top of that branch. So it covers up the stem. Nice little pointed beak. And remembering that watercolor dries 20 to 30% lighter than when we put it on. I'm going back onto my mitts. I have a little bit of a shadow on my mittens, so I'm going to paint them really full strength red. The same red, I'm not changing the color, but I'm giving it a nice deep coat. I'm still going to use my pointed brush, and I'm going to put one little dot in the center of the eye for the bird. So just one little dot in the center, just for the eye on the bird. And lastly, if you still have that gray or a blue-gray mix that we did for the center of the snowman, I'm going to do the same effect around the snowballs, but lots of water. So I don't want to cover in the white in the center, but I want to give the look of some of those snowballs melting a little bit. So they're a little bit of a blue gray or blue black mix, but more blue. It really helps those show up. And lastly, what's left to do is to decide what your artist signature is going to look like, where you're going to put that. I like this color, a cobalt. And so I'm going to stick with the cobalt color, and I'm going to put my signature right down alongside the snowman. And so when and if I decide to put this picture in a frame, it's going to show up. It's not too far down on the picture. So there's our salty snow figure. Hope you enjoyed that. Thanks, everybody.